Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our third talk here with Cindy Taji. She has been going through the MDMA experience with support from Ayurvedic interventions for diet, lifestyle, and formulations, in addition to the psychological changes. And we're going to get a third update today before her next session of MDMA that's coming up in a few days.
So Cindy? Tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow? Welcome back. All right, let's get ready.
Yeah, and just disclaimer, we need to remind everybody that MDMA is actually not legal for the consumption of use. It is only legal in a clinical setting, and I am doing it with professionals who have gotten permission from the FDA to be able to do this. So we just wanted to get that clear. I think we forgot to mention that before, but just really wanted to let everyone know that this is still a illegal substance. And so we just need to be careful, and I'm taking it in a clinical setting that's been approved by the FDA. So I just wanted to get that clear.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's very, very important. Actually, we should have mentioned that in the last two videos, but it also does apply to our last two talks as well.
100%. And I think when I posted it, but I'm sure everybody pretty much knows that now. And there's also, if we want to put in the notes too, a link to Uberman. He talks about MDMA and he talks about the MAPS program quite extensively in a previous podcast. So we could put the link to that too if people want
to
educate themselves more about MDMA and what it does on a biological level.
Great.
I think I explained it a little bit before, but he really goes into the depth of how dopamine and the reuptake of dopamine and how it just floods your body with dopamine. And then the really cool thing about MDMA that's different than any other psychedelics is that it floods your system with serotonin probably 8 times the amount that we typically get. And so that's the pathogen that helps us to feel a lot of empathy for ourselves and to be able to go back. And so I just wanted to put that in there because I think that has a lot to do with how it kind of disrupts a little bit of the gut biome, or I don't know if I want to speak to that, but I just wanted to say a little bit about the biology of what's happening.
Yeah, so there's the scientific side of it, the sort of back end details of how this whole thing works, theoretically, but then there's the actual experience of it as well.
Yeah.
And so, we'd love to hear how the last few weeks have been going for you, both physically as well as, of course, psychologically. And from what you've started to mention and note in your tracker, it sounds like it's been a little bit of a roller coaster at times.
It's been a lot harder. I think the last time I was so excited because I'm like, I felt amazing. And the only thing after was my stomach hurt really bad. And then this time they gave me a larger dose. So every time you go back, they give you a larger dose of the MDMA. And I felt really good going into it. I felt great. My body felt amazing. My stomach didn't hurt anymore. I felt very clear. So I was excited. I was so excited to be like, okay, let's go again. Let's get this party started again, because I love the dancing part that I felt and just wanting to move through my body. And it just felt amazing. But this time was a little bit different. I think a lot of shadow came through this time, and a lot of past harm came through. And so I had the one thing that's tricky about these substances is you can't stop the train, so to speak. You can't stop it. So I just got to sit in the darkness of my past, and that was really, really, really challenging. And for the time that I was there, they talk about how a lot of times MDMA pretty much opens the floodgates of just talking. So I think I talked for 6 hours of the 8-hour session. Yeah.
Oh, I hope you had some good people to talk with.
It was funny because they told me that after. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, what did I say? And then for me, it was a lot of feeling getting in trouble. And it's interesting because, talking about Ayurveda and talking about all these different modalities that we're using that are outside of this framework of what Western medicine prescribes for us. It's just interesting. I think that is very deeply rooted in a lot of us, that we're afraid to try new things. We're afraid of oh, but that's not what that's not what authority's saying, and that's not what my government's saying, and that's not what, you know. And so a lot of that came through for me in this last session.
Wow. So that's a big part of maturing, actually, because to be afraid of trying new things, or to be afraid of, possibly the repercussions of what may happen, right? If we go against the authority, if we go against the government, all this and that kind of thing, are ultimately that we have to take personal responsibility for ourselves.
Yes. And this is kind of diverting to the psychedelic conference that was held. But during this time, after my second session and my third tomorrow, the psychedelic conference was in Denver. So 13,000 people, I think, gathered. It was the largest psychedelic convention globally that's ever happened. And, all professionals of all kinds were there. And one of, his name's Carl Hart, I believe. He has been going to Congress and going to government as much as he can to say body autonomy, right? Like, let us choose. And I love that for Ayurveda too, because I think there's going to come a time when we're like, let us choose how we want to treat our bodies. And he made such a good, he made such a good point. He said, we let these teenagers put helmets on and crash each other's heads. We let people get in a ring and MMA and boxing and just let people go at it. How is choosing what we put in our bodies? How does that, that doesn't make sense. It seems really wackadoodie, right?
Yeah, and that's the whole idea behind medical pluralism as well. And that is actually a common normal theme in many countries outside of the US. There are multiple systems of medicine available to the public, and each individual gets to make their choice anytime as to which system of medicine or healthcare they want to follow at any time, and they can change at any time as well. But ultimately, same thing, right? They're responsible for that.
100%. And so I think that's like what this last month has kind of shown me is like I get to take responsibility for my health now and my body now. And for so long, like part of me feeling this void inside of myself, and studying all different modalities of health until I found you, and to actually have something work and to fill this void and to make sense of my emotions, but also my biology, and understanding how they're not separate. And then being able to treat my biology, and then that's affecting my emotions, right? And it's like this weird, symbiotic relationship that continues to happen regardless of where I am in my environment. And so I was sad after I was done because it was so hard, and I didn't have that beautiful expression of just grace like I did the first time. It was more like a tornado of helplessness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. But I know that I needed to sit in it. But what it did to my body, it just depressed me. I felt this upheaval of energy, right? First of all, but then the aftermath, it was just kind of exposed. And then I think I met with you shortly after, and you got me on the ghee again. I don't know if you want to talk about the ghee.
We can always talk about ghee.
And what that did, because I know that I think you've told me before, it helps with the HPA axis, or?
Well, so it helps it does a lot of things.
Okay.
Now, when we're talking about ghee in Ayurveda, especially the ghee that you are using, in India, this is referred to as medicated ghee. It is usually regular cow's ghee that is created through a traditional process, which I'm not going to go into in detail here, but it's not the same normal process. It's what we would usually find in the US in the markets as cultured ghee. Okay, so we'd start with that as our base, and then we'd actually run a purification process of it, cook it down with certain herbs so that it cooks out any impurities. And, we don't necessarily have good explanations of what are these impurities? Are they heavy metals? Are they things that we would normally think of or hear of in a Western cultural setting? Not necessarily, okay? In Ayurveda, we often even see latent moisture in something as an impurity. So if the ghee in its first processing step of being created hadn't been cooked out completely, meaning there was some latent moisture left, running this sort of like prep purification process on it before we make it medicinal, that also helps to cook out any latent moisture. I think it also helps to make the ghee amenable to pulling in the value, the medicinal value of what we are actually going to use to create the final medicated form of it. So there's the first step of creating the ghee, second step of prepping it for medicating it, which is purification process, and then the third step of actually medicating it. And these all have specific Sanskrit names in it. The last one is the Siddha Grita, which means that it's medicated ghee, essentially. And all these Siddha Gritas will have specific names for the targeted purpose and use that we want to achieve. And that's a whole other processing method that may take as little as 1 to 3 or 4 days in some types of ghee. Now, the ghee that you have been using, you've been using several of them, but the one that we went back to after this second round was the one that I affectionately call the cow poop ghee, and that is because it has 5 ingredients of cow in it. Ghee, number 1, milk, yogurt, cow urine, and the freshly expressed juice of cow poop.
I always just tell people that I'm getting feces transplants, and that's a thing.
Fecal transplants are now a thing, and just the last 10 to 15 years, really. So this is not like
it's disgusting,
crazy.
But
It is
I feel it. I feel it within 30 minutes. All of a sudden, it's like this, like that's literally what it feels like. It feels like my body is starting to vibrate on a frequency that I'm not so sure of. But then as I sit with it, I become more clear in, I want to say my truth.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's more of like, I get this truth and clarity of, oh, wow, I really have not been in my body. And when I say in my body, I mean, we could go down lots of rabbit holes with that. But essentially, it's like I'm just not aware of what's happening, introception, right? And so my introception feels like it gets heightened, so I can really feel what's happening in my body more. So then I can really feel, oh, I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat. And so then when I eat lunch, I like slow everything down, and I actually take more time and more mindful, I guess, practices when I'm cooking my lunch before after I eat the ghee. And I have more gratitude for what I'm putting in my body. So I really noticed like it really slows me down to create a more mindful place for me to like eat and to really like think about like what's going on in here and how do I really want to take care of my body.
Wonderful. So that's a wonderful outcome that you can feel immediately from taking this ghee. There are many more outcomes that are going to show up later down the road as well, a week later. A month later, several months later. When we take a small dose of this for long enough, it builds up in kind of like a cumulative way to steer the body in a different direction.
Yeah. I also noticed, I want to ask you about this. It brings up emotions that sometimes are pretty intense. And I don't know how that happens, but it does.
Yeah. You've read the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yeah.
And this is, in my opinion, one of the best books to help people of a Western background start to understand how emotions are tied into the physical body.
Yeah. And Uberman talks about this, and he talks, sorry, can you hear the train?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. He talks about the insula, and he talks about the insula to amygdala response.
Okay.
And somebody with PTSD or early childhood trauma, that bandwidth or whatever is just really thick. And so there's not a lot of time, there's not a lot of space to create a different response. It's just like the insula alerts that something's not right in the environment, and then the amygdala sends the signals to get the sympathetic system going, that flight, fight, freeze, fawn, faint, or whatever. that make
So do
sense?
you think it's almost like fibrosis in the sense that it's patterned
Yes.
so deeply
Yep.
in?
Yep. And
There's
so,
no other,
yeah, so MDMA does that, but I also feel like the ghee, there's something similar is happening where
Well, so here's the
stimulus to
thing.
response, there's something transitioning there.
Yeah. Have you ever taken some oil and some water and put them in a jar and tried to shake it?
Right.
If you put it back down on the counter, they're going
They're
to
going to
separate.
separate.
The oil and the water, they don't mix. So oil is unable to penetrate water. Oil can only penetrate other fat soluble items. And so
Oh,
every single cell in the body
yeah.
is lined with a double phospholipid membrane, which is
Makes sense.
fat-based membrane. And so now this ghee, which has been medicated to have a specific target location, that may be an organ, that may be multiple organs, that may be an entire system or a particular part of the body, a section of the body. It has a targeted location and it has a job to do. So it gets to that location, it penetrates, and it does its job. And this cow poop ghee, its job is to help reset or reestablish a healthy gut-brain connection.
And that would make sense how it relates to kind of like the HPA axis for the hypothalamus, the adrenals, which makes sense with the endocrine system and the nervous system because of the emotions and then how you respond, how your nervous system responds to the endocrine system and the neurohormones and all of that.
Yep. It's one of our strongest ghees to help retrain the gut microbiome. Now, we also have other ghees that will perform this type of job, but they'll do it in a different way. And so we use them in different situations and different presentations.
And it's interesting too, just comparing like when I took the ghee, because I took it last year when I got placebo, and its effect this year feels a lot stronger.
Interesting.
And I wonder if that's because it's opening, the MDMA is allowing me to open pathways, I guess you could call it, pathways that have been so fibrously bound, right? And so now it feels like that ghee is like, because my stomach feels so much better. And I can feel even like how I used to always talk about down on my right side, there's always that really, really tight constricted space. It seems to be lightening up.
Great.
Right?
Does it feel like it's softer or more pliable?
Yes, softer and more pliable and not so large. It just like feels like it's starting to smooth out. And
Awesome.
I noticed like my cramps weren't as bad either this time.
Great.
Yeah. So it's like these little subtle things that have been changing, and I can see how important it is to, I'm just so grateful that in between these sessions, because my body has done has had some weird reactions. And I feel like you have been able to help me adjust and recalibrate.
Well, to do something like a psychedelic of any level, even, a person, especially if they do it at a significant dose, like a proper kind of full dose, that would be what we would consider as a peak experience. It is going to be so powerful. It is going to have the ability, the potential to change that person's, mental state, their perception of the world, their way of thinking and all of that, so that the body, it now has to catch up to that new way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And the ghee helps the body become softer, become more pliable. It penetrates into these fibrous places, into these hard, stuck up areas where there's been maybe a lack of circulation, or reduced oxygen flow, right? The body has sort of guarded that space for so long. It's built that barrier that nothing else is going to get in, or very few things are going to be able to penetrate that except some type of oil-based substance, which has the ability to create that softness.
Oh, wow. It's so interesting. As you're saying that, I'm remembering now that I used to get a pain right in where my hip and my legs meet, so that I just lost the muscle that connects the back of the back pretty much to the legs so you can run. Dang, I can't remember the muscle, but anyway, down in that area, it usually,
the psoas?
Yes, thank you, the psoas. Something shifted, and maybe the ghee had something to do with that, because usually like I get this really tight and it almost feels like either gets really tight or it feels like there's blood pooling, like a warmth sensation that comes down there after I get triggered. So sometimes I get triggered and I can tell it's like blood's trying to go down to that area to get me to run, but then I couldn't run. So then I froze.
So interesting. So then, yeah, there's some kind of physiological blockage.
Yeah.
Meaning that, like, obviously your anatomy is not broken in that sense. Like, there's no anatomical blockage, because if there were, you'd lose blood supply to that and you'd have major problems pretty quickly, right? So if it only happens in those events, then yeah, your emotional state is kicking off some type of trained muscular contraction or trained reaction or trained response in that way. And that's creating that blockage. And so, you know, all the techniques that you would have learned in yoga, breathing deeply, kind of letting yourself relax, trying to stretch out, those types of things. Even one of my favorite things that Huberman talks about is the physiological sigh, because it's so easy. And if you could just remember to do it in that difficult moment, you'll get the benefits from it.
Yes.
But all these little tools are, you know, they're available and they don't cost anything.
They don't cost anything. And I'm recognizing that, you know, with your help and over this stretch of the 2.5 years that we've been working together extensively, stimulus to response, it used to be like this, like stimulus response, like I didn't have a bandwidth. And it feels like, as my capacity to feel and allow myself to feel, I'm remembering, oh, breathe, do the bumblebee breath, right? Like you know, and all of that like helps tone that vagus nerve, helps that parasympathetic nervous system kick in so that I can tend to befriend my body. And it felt like this last time I just got into a tornado. It was just a tornado of emotions. And the ghee and then the other formulas that you were helping me, that you helped, because then I started to get sick. That's right. Yeah. So I started to get sick, right? Like, started taking all the formulas, and then I started to get sick. And I don't know if that, like the depression, like when we get depressed, I always think of it as like we're depressing our system, and there's so much pressure there that it's our immune system really does get affected by our emotions, correct?
Yeah, I think about it this way. Any type of stress that happens, whether it be something that we impose upon ourselves, which we do very frequently, right? Or it's something that's outside, you know, somebody gets hit in a car accident, they are at no fault whatsoever. It's extremely stressful. Wherever that stress comes from, it causes the body to, you know, pull from its storage, pull from its batteries to be able to get through that. And if a person doesn't have enough in their batteries, everything kind of tanks.
Yes.
And so immunity is kind of like our backup battery system. How long can we go without doing the things that we should be doing to maintain a high level of that reserve?
Yeah, and it was frustrating this time because I recognized like that stress, like the stress that I felt with it really was like I call it the Bermuda Triangle, because of like when you got helplessness and hopelessness and like worthlessness, you're just like spiraling down. And I got down to that bottom, and I know I needed to in my process of healing, because I had to go and pull the root out, you know, and so I had to experience all of that, because I think I've kind of been on the surface for the last few years. And so this last session just kind of took me all the way down and got me to the root, pulled it out. But as I did that, it's crazy how the lack of motivation, because you feel like this isn't working. Like I'm eating healthy, I'm exercising, I am doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And something clicked in me, and it was just like, just allow it. Just allow your body to do whatever it needs to do. And so I allowed myself to just sit in it.
Good for you. That's the best thing you could have done. Congratulations.
Yeah, instead of resisting and fighting. And I'm like, well, I am doing everything that I know that, you know, Jess has helped me have me do, and my therapists have helped me do, and all the breath work and all the things I've been practicing. So I just sat in it. And that was like the hardest day of my life, I think. But it also, like, every little thing I do now is going to keep building to make my life and help me rebuild or build back better, or help me get to the place where I'm thriving. But I think I've just been trying to do all of these things up here, and I really just had to finally go down all the way. But in that process, like, I got sick.
Yep.
So then we changed our formulas.
Exactly. And we moved away from the ghee at that point because ghee is contraindicated in a lot of situations, including when a person doesn't have the digestive capacity to utilize it properly. And if a person's sick, they're, you know what I mean? That's
Okay.
at a lower point. So it's not a bad thing. It's not to be taken like, oh, I can't do the ghee, something must be wrong with it. There's nothing to do with that. The body has to cycle through these different states. And, you know, as we work with Ayurvedic formulations, we're always looking at what stage is that person in right now. And then we're lining the formulations up to best support that stage, and then to try to direct the person into the next best stage possible, which of course is heading towards optimal, ideal health.
Yeah. And I felt the shift because I can't believe how fast, because usually the way that my sickness presented itself in the past, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I think it was, the same type of symptoms happened. I was out for like 6 weeks. Like it
Wow.
took me 6 weeks to really fully feel better. And then I kept getting reoccurring lung issues and bronchitis, pneumonia, all those things. So it kind of felt like that was coming back. And then, you know, I didn't want to email you like, Jess, I'm so sorry. I'm so needy, but I'm sick. But you were so great. And you're like, okay, let's switch it up. And it was so easy because all you had to do was go into my tracker and just change it up real quick. Well, luckily I have like an Ayurvedic, I've got a lot of stuff on hand. And I was able to switch over, and it was like I went down, pulled out the root, and then I like came back up. That's really what it felt like. And I cannot believe how fast I overcame my sickness.
That's amazing.
Incredible. The way I felt, it would have usually knocked me out for a week at least. And it felt like 3 days that I was down, and then it just started to come back up.
Well, great. And so that hopefully helps to still reinforce your confidence that, you know, like you said, you are doing the right things. You know you're doing the right things. These waves may come through, but like when we look into, you know, Buddhism and those types of philosophies, everything is temporary. And so if you can have that presence of mind in that moment to just say, hey, this is going to pass. Just accept it, let it be what it is, and keep trucking along. You're on the right track. Maintain your confidence whenever, wherever possible. And I think, you know, you've done an absolutely amazing job over the last couple of years, getting into a place where you can genuinely build that confidence. And that's what has allowed you to make all these changes.
Yeah.
Giving you the, you know, overcoming the fear and facing all of this.
Yeah. And it was interesting because as soon as I started to do just the micro changes, and I know you and I have talked about this so many times, but I love the whole micro to macro experience, because all I did was I was like, okay, well, I am going to bed a little bit later, so I've got to start getting to bed. And even in the summertime, it's so hard because sun's up later, you know, and that's when it cools off. So kids want to play outside. I was like, no, I've got to be in bed. I've got to be asleep by 10. And so, you know, we started to come back to that. And so,
I can give you one little tip on that if you want.
Okay. Yes, please.
So even in classical literature, the summer season, which happens at a different time of the year in India, but the hottest period of the year that we will call the summer season, is the only season in which taking a nap is recommended, a nap during the day.
That makes me feel better because I kept falling asleep right around 2 or 3. I was like, I just got to sit down for a second. I was out.
Perfect.
That's
so your body's
excellent.
doing what it should naturally be doing.
Yes. And you know, when I'm waking up and lighter meals. And so I'm realizing like, I don't have to eat what everyone else is eating. And I am not craving the heavier meals anymore. I'm not craving as much food. And to honor that, and drinking more water and electrolytes. And I love the electrolyte drink that you have told me about, the lime, salt, and sugar.
Perfect. That's super easy too.
So easy. And so all of these easy applications that I've learned in Ayurveda are working. And it's like, oh my gosh, this actually works. Like I'm always like, my mind keeps being blown all the time that Ayurveda works, because like we were talking about in the beginning of our conversation today, it's this mindset, right? That we've all been conditioned to believe that this is the way, this is the American way, this is the Western way of how we approach medicine. This is how we approach success in business and career and all of these things. And so to just kind of zoom out and tap in and do a little introspection, it's completely backwards. It feels inverted. I'm like, wait a second. Anyways, but I'm so grateful for the tools that I've been able to have, because it has been such an emotional upheaval, and just to recognize what that does in my body, and how I can recognize now in my past and the patterns that led up to a lot of times when I was sick, is because there were these times when I felt helpless or hopeless or worthless. And
Guess
yeah.
where those emotions go as they become overwhelming in your body? They've gone beyond the point of what any person can manage in that moment. Where do those extra emotions go?
I want to know from you.
Well, we can kind of think about them like food. Like if
Okay.
we eat a little too much for a few, too many days or weeks in a row, where does all that excess nutrition go?
Well, I want to call it AMA, but is that it? No.
So we can think about it as
Like undigested food, right?
So yes, AMA is best translated as undigested or incompletely digested waste materials. But that is just way too general of an answer. It doesn't give us any specific understanding of what's happening. And that's what we need. We need the details. We need to know what's actually going on here. If a person eats, let's say somebody goes through a gallon of ice cream in a week, and the next week and the week after that, and whatever else they want to eat for a couple weeks, and they're not doing enough exercise to burn it all off, where does it go?
It's going to go around your belly. It's going to go in the arms, all these different places with adipose tissue that just starts to accumulate. Yes.
Precisely. It gets converted into fat tissue. The excess glucose that the body doesn't need to burn off as usable energy in that moment has to get stored somewhere.
So is that the same thing with stress?
So guess what? When we have excess emotions, and this is why the Body Keeps the Score book is so valuable, because he specifically talks about this as well. And so it's not just from an Ayurvedic perspective, but we also have, Western correlation to look at that helps us understand the details. Excess emotions, they flood the body. And I don't know exactly what form this may be in, if it is in neuroreceptors, people like Huberman and those kinds of folks, they're going to have much better answers than I will for that level of it. But whatever it is going to flood the body, and it's going to get trapped up somewhere. And most commonly, what we see is that it's stuck, it's stored, it's put on ice essentially in the adipose tissue. Now remember, what can cut through fat?
Fat or ghee or oil.
Only fat. So now we start using the medicated ghee, and it starts cutting down into that adipose tissue. And guess what?
Boom. Yep, that makes so much sense. And it's interesting, because when I was doing the ghee when I had placebo, well, actually I started doing ghees forever ago, but it's interesting because I remember going in therapy and I could smell smells that weren't there. They were phantom smells that were connected to past experiences. And I find that, and the Body Keeps the Score talks about that. They talk about how, and this is what I love about that book, is that they're showing that because a lot of times people have told me, you're having false memories. You're having, these are, but when you read The Body Keeps the Score, and more science is showing this, that if something happened when you were 5, right, and you shut down, exactly what you're saying, it's like too much emotion floods the system, and we can talk about norepinephrine, epinephrine, cortisol. And that's interesting that you're talking about, because, cortisol goes up when you're eating too much food and too much sugar. Same thing with stress, cortisol goes up. So it makes sense that it gets stored in the adipose tissue. But in The Body Keeps the Score, they say it doesn't matter if it was 5 minutes or 35 years, once it's stuck and frozen. If it comes out 35 years later, it's like it just happened.
Yep.
And then that's what re-traumatizes a lot of people. They don't have the correct tools to deal with that emotion that gets released. Because then your body does do everything that it would have done if it could have.
And so these peak experiences help to unlock the doors on that stuff.
Oh,
And
I
boom,
like that.
the flood comes out. And now this could be any, psychedelic experience. It could be another traumatic experience that re-traumatizes the person in a similar or even different way. It could be some type of some type of intervention that is meant to help the person, like Panchakarma, when it's done properly, of course, not this bliss therapy thing. And when that is actually done with the ghee in the way it's supposed to be done, we are unlocking lots of doors.
Yeah. And I think this is another time for us to say, this is why it's so important for us to make sure we're in good hands. Like if you do take these substances, right? Because we know people, there's underground facilities all over the place. You don't know what doors you're unlocking. You have
Exactly.
no idea, because so much of the unconscious is being exposed and you don't know. And so that's why it's so important, like Panchakarma, doing it with a professional that has been trained. And same thing with psychedelics or
100%.
MDMA. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more that has to go into the planning and execution of these therapies and interventions than I think most people realize from the nice marketing that's out there that really makes it look so happy and enjoyable. Panchakarma
Exactly.
it's a miserable experience when done properly.
Well, and yeah, that's why I'm okay to wait for a little bit, but until I'm done with this. But yeah, that is interesting. I just think of, like, you take the queen bee out of a hive and you put it somewhere else and the bees are all going to come out. And that's essentially what it kind of feels like. You're going and taking out the root of what is creating this system of safety that you've been living with your whole life.
That's a great analogy, actually. That's really perfect, because after this peak experience, right, we've taken the queen out, and if that's the root cause of the disease or the problem, the rest of the body automatically wants to go back to that thing. And so if we don't have a plan in place and ways to now help the body retrain into its new state to catch up with this new clean mind and perspective, then why even go through all this?
That is like the perfect analogy about what to explain my last experience. It was almost like I felt like the first one I had was just beautiful, and exactly like just beautiful, blissful state of just like, oh, this is grace and beauty, and we're allowed to feel everything, and there's no judgment. And then the next one was like, let's go get the queen bee now. Let's go get her and let's go put her somewhere else. And it's exactly that. My body was just like, let's go back. And I couldn't. It's like, once you experience a different state or stage or whatever, I don't want to go back to the way I used to be. I don't. And I think my body was trying to grab onto, any of these protector parts. And I think that's why I got so sick. It's like, no, let's go back. Let's go back to 1988 when you learned how to protect yourself. Like, the body knows what to do from that stage on. And like now to 2023, my body's like, what's happening? We've been doing this for 40 years. What in the heck are you doing? Like, the bees were like, no, we don't know how to dance to this new queen.
Exactly.
But I got a new queen in me now.
You do. And the fact that you made that choice in that moment to just sit with it.
Yeah.
I cannot think of any other point in time that I have known you, at least for the last 5 or 6 years, that you would have made that choice.
No, because I couldn't. I didn't, my body wasn't ready.
Right.
I don't think my body was ready. And I think my body is finally strong enough to be able to hold it all and to sit in that tornado. And it was so funny because as I'm sitting in this tornado, there were like 6 tornado warnings in Colorado that day. I was like, what's happening? Because I literally, like, in all my journals, it's just a tornado. And there were all these tornado warnings. I'm like, of course, let's just sit in it. Let's wait for it. The tornado never came. And it showed me how powerful our mind is.
Wow.
It showed me how powerful. And I kept reminding myself, my body is safe. My body is strong. I'm doing everything I can to keep my body properly in a state of swastika, right?
Good for you, Cindy. Congratulations.
Did I say the word right?
Yes, you did.
So I did. I was like, no, I'm doing the proper things that I need to do. So I know my body's safe. My mind is just playing tricks on me.
Yeah, it's the mind is a very powerful thing. It's a very dangerous thing as well.
100%.
It's like Could be like an untrained Doberman, an untrained dog that can be very dangerous. An untrained German Shepherd.
And you need deliberate engagement in positive experiences, just like a dog does, right? The Pavlov's law, like you need rewards, otherwise it's hard to keep going. And so I think it was so refreshing when I emailed you and you're like, okay, let's switch it up. We switched it up. I had deliberate engagement with an experience that I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel settled. And the stuff that I took after lunch, I'm not going to even try to pronounce them. It was the syrup and the one that started with sud. Those two combinations, it was amazing how it just settled me.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask about that one actually, because that liquid, it's called Ela Kanadi Kashayam. That is one that is used as a rasayana or regenerative for the respiratory system.
Yes.
And also helps to boost immunity. It makes the body very strong. Its two main ingredients are Ela, which is cardamom, and Kana, which is another synonym for pipli, which is Piper longum.
Okay.
And it's a member of the Piperaceae family. It doesn't work exactly like black pepper. It has a little bit more of a regenerative effect.
Okay. Yes.
And so those two, yeah. So your respiration should be better. But now what also happens is when the lungs function more effectively at higher capacity, now the digestive system also does as well. Because the entire cardiovascular system is based off of pumps, essentially. So our respiration helps aid heart function, which pumps the blood through the body, right? And so as we breathe properly, everything else comes into sync because of these pumping mechanisms.
And that makes sense, because when I was sick, if I took a breath in, it hurt. It hurt so bad when I was sick. And remember, I was explaining that chest pain and my heart area, all of this. Yeah. And after I was taking those two formulas, I could breathe. You're right. It started to increase my capacity. And I realized how important my breath has been in this process of healing this unprocessed trauma. Because if I can't breathe through it, I stay in that hyper chamber of just like my locked ribs and my heart's just pumping really, really fast. And I'm not breathing. It doesn't feel like I'm breathing, but it's breathing very shallow. Yeah. And so my capacity to breathe, and I've noticed that since I've started working with you, is my capacity for my lungs to expand and to take in air has increased.
Great.
Substantially.
Wonderful.
Substantially.
Wonderful. So there's a lot of exercise. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that just has been allowing my diaphragm to be able to actually, go down, and I feel my belly relaxing. And so my breath work, it's gotten easier, and you have to practice it. It's not like you can I do breath work every day, but my capacity to breathe, take in bigger breaths, hold my breath, and actually cognitively use the higher functions of my brain to remind myself to do that when I'm in these other states of panic and stress, when you're just like, everything goes out the door. But my body's remembering to do that because I've been practicing it.
Wonderful. And have you noticed any changes in your breathing when you exercise or go running?
Yes, it's getting easier.
Awesome. Especially you guys are up at altitude as well.
I know, right? Yes, no, it's been a lot better. And even like my breath in yoga, that has been even better. And in some postures that have usually created a lot of distress for me, when I get in those postures, the breath has not been so constricted.
Excellent.
But I also think the Brahma pills, that's all I call them.
The after breakfast pills.
After breakfast pills, thank you. The after breakfast pill has really helped my cognition, has really helped my ability to remember, which I feel very grateful for, because as I've learned more and more about stress and what it does to your higher cognitive, or what is it, the higher cortical functions. There we go. It's just unfortunate that when we're in stressful states, we just can't access that. And I feel like those the breakfast after pills have helped that.
Excellent. Yeah, so that one is the Brahmiwati. And the full name of it is Brahmiwati Swarna Yukta. And the word swarna means gold, and yukta means compounded with or formulated with. So Brahmi, which is kind of like ginkgo biloba or one of those sort of things. I'm not remembering the botanical name right off the top of my head. There's a little bit of a confusion with this one and another one called Mandukaparni. They're both very similar. Anyways, this main herb is compounded into a tablet form with purified gold added into it. And that's another thing that thankfully has started to become more popular in nutraceutical use, all that kind of stuff. So gold helps to realign the brain. It helps to rewire the brain. And so as you or anybody is going through a process like this and you're trying to have this peak experience, dissolve essentially that trauma that has been sitting there trapping you and encasing you in a, this response that you're just replaying over and over again. We want to get rid of that and we want to lay new lines down.
Yes.
And those new lines are going to be what helps you actually set your mind up to be the person that you genuinely are and that you genuinely want to be, and also help your body then adapt more easily to that new psychological state.
And I'll have to admit that these formulas are helping me do that, because I have tried to be positive. I have tried to catch my thoughts and be like, no, that's I've done this in the past, but if you don't have the biomechanisms that are helping you actually, like neurons, be able to fire and wire, right? What do they say? Something fire together, wire together. Thoughts.
Yep, that's a famous, I think, Joe Dispenza.
Yes,
too.
which, yeah, anyway, yes, I do believe that, but I do believe that if we're taking something that's going to help facilitate to lay down those pathways, I cannot believe the difference that it is making to build back these positive neuroplasticity, I guess you could say, because and I think sometimes, like Rick Hansen, he's great. He's have you heard of Rick Hansen?
You've told me about him, and he sounds like such a fantastic person.
And I've just found him recently, but he gave a talk about rewiring the brain and positive neuroplasticity. And he said, he talked about how important community is, first of all, and how important it is to have people. And I'm so grateful for you, Jess, because you've been so instrumental, like shed tears all the time, because just having that support, and I know that I know the emotional component of like, you're like, let's just do your body. Come on. I'm like, the chest, please listen to me. But it is helpful, right? To just have somebody that understands what's happening in my body, because for so long, I felt like I was crazy. I'm like, what is going on? Why can't I do this? But then to understand your body's just not allowing you to do this. And then you helping my body to be able to actually do receive, I guess you could say, receive the work that I've been working on in the background.
Yeah, that's a very good way to think about it. And for you, this preparation on the physical level, I mean, this took years to really get to the point where your psychology was going to be ready to handle something like this in a mature way that is going to give you a positive outcome that is going to further benefit, the physical progression. We can't just say, okay, let's take the body and fix that to 100%, and then we'll go back and deal with the mind later and fix that, right? They kind of build on top of each other. It's like, you can only put one step on the ladder at a time, and you have to bring the other one up, and you have to bring the other one up. And so it's this constant interplay between the physiology of the body and the psychology of the mind in order to really get a person to where they want to be.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, that's been great. My pain in the right side of my head has gotten substantially better. Oh my goodness, I haven't had any flare-ups.
Right.
Rubbing the oil. I'm not even trying to say.
Did you do that? That was the Maharaja Prasarani.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Oil in my nose is crucial. I don't know if it's been if over the last couple of years of doing that in a routine manner, but something with MDMA as well. Like the next morning, like I had berries and I could taste them, and that was so exciting because after I had COVID, I lost my smell, and that's been coming back. And so it kind of felt like MDMA kind of did something, maybe it was all of the dopamine and the serotonin, I don't know. And then in combination with what you've helped me with, it's slowly starting to come back.
Awesome. Yeah, as much as we would love to be able to get an exact answer and
I
know
know, it's so
exactly,
hard.
right? We did this and it caused that outcome. I mean,
Yeah.
we approach this from a scientific perspective, and that's what we need to get that, to be certain of what we're doing. But ultimately, I don't know if that's ever going to be possible in our lifetimes. I don't know. Because there's just so many possible factors, right? And what are the things that are impeding the body from being able to regenerate itself in the first place? So something like smell or taste, those sensations go out because of a virus like the COVID-19 virus. If that happens, why is it that the body cannot reinstate those, right? What is blocking that? And so the beautiful thing about Ayurveda is that we may not always be able to get the answer why, but we are able to actually make it happen.
Yes.
And so what's more important, doing it or knowing why?
Yes, and it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, and I've my mindset has completely changed from a quick fix to this is my life now.
Awesome.
And that makes it feel a little more exciting because I am so amazed at the progress I've made, and I feel good about saying that. For so long, I felt so much shame anytime we would talk about that because they're like, well, look where you've been, and I'm like, I didn't mean to be there. I didn't want to be where I was at. But I feel a lot more empowered each day to be like, I can pull myself out of wherever I'm at.
That's amazing, Cindy. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Because it has been really challenging. And I think when we have setbacks, and we're going to always have setbacks. And that's the other thing I've learned this last month. It's like, and even with MDMA, I'm like, it is not the cure. It's a help. It's a tool. It's helpful. And even my therapists keep reminding me, like, Cindy, like, you are the medicine. And we have to remember we are the medicine.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful because I think so many people are so desperate to feel better. And so we jump on anything that's popular.
Yeah.
And the things that aren't so popular are the things that take time and dedication and discipline. It's like
precisely. Yep. And the same thing you were saying at the very beginning, that sort of Western mentality, that Western approach, or what the Western society and culture tells us is the way to do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
If maybe, I'm sure some people find an answer or find a way to make it work using those approaches, but everybody can't or everybody doesn't. And so to be open to trying something like this, which is, Ayurveda is a fully holistic, I want to say natural, but that doesn't, what does that really mean? Like a natural system.
Right.
It's based on the laws of nature and the ways in which the human body and mind and even soul or spirit function in a coordinated manner to maintain life. And how do we, adjust things? How do we make changes to this? We could just as easily kill a person with Ayurvedic medicine as we can cure them. So
Yeah.
it's how we choose to use this. Likewise with the, psychedelics.
Yeah.
A person could get killed with that too.
Yeah, 100%. And so I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful that I've been able to use Ayurveda in combination, because it just feels like, I know if I would have just kept doing the Ayurveda and therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and really I need to like give a shout out to the therapist that I've had for 5 years. She's been instrumental, like, love Sarah. So make sure it's not just like I'm doing one thing. I do yoga, I do meditation, I have sound bowls, I do a lot of journaling, I do a lot of art. So there's a lot of ways that I express myself. And these are just lots of different tools that we use, and everybody's got to find their own. And that's the other thing I'm realizing, like, everybody's got to find their own way. But the more we can get in touch with, that introspection or the internal workings of what's happening, we will know there's that innate intelligence that if we quiet the mind, it'll teach us. And I know that's how I found you, because it wasn't something that I had no idea about. But then it was like, you've got to find Ayurveda. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. I can't even say it right. I can't even spell the word. And, and then I found you, and it's been taking time. It's been 6 years almost. So, but I'm so glad I've stuck with it. So grateful I've stuck with it.
I'm so glad to, because I never would have guessed. It would have been very hard to predict that you were going to get this good of an outcome and be able to even, do something as powerful as MDMA at the right time like this.
Yeah. And I couldn't have done it. I could not have done it 5 years ago.
No way.
No, it would have wrecked me. So I'm grateful that I feel like I've kind of done it the turtle way, but that's okay. And it's not over yet. And there's going to be more setbacks, and life is going to present itself with more challenges. But there's also going to be more beautiful experiences that hopefully I can feel, because my body will allow, instead of being afraid of positivity.
Excellent. Slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I feel like my body, like I really did. I was struggling this month. And so I kind of feel like the last few days, I feel a lot more stable, feel a lot stronger. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm going back tomorrow.
You ready for it?
Are you ready for it?
I'm excited to hear how this one's going to go, because this is going to be your third and final, right? The biggest dose?
Yeah, the largest dose. I'm not sure exactly how much they're giving me, but tomorrow is my final one. Awesome. And so I'm sure you'll be hearing from me on Wednesday.
I hope so.
What do you recommend? What should I do?
Well, what do you want to get out of it?
I'm ready to just be at peace. I'm ready to just be full of equanimity. Like, here's where I am now. I'm tired of seeking. I'm just ready to be at peace with everything and just be okay. That's kind of what I'm hoping now. And there's nothing that I really want to explore or figure out, or did this happen? Did that happen? And that's one more thing I will say is this last session, the tears that just always come. So many question marks became periods.
Wow.
And I think that's what I had to sit with. And now I'm ready to just be at peace with that. I really am, because I can't go back and change anything. And I'm also learning that because it has been so long, the justice that I kept seeking, which I think was more of the little girl inside of me, like, put these people in behind bars, like they should be in timeout, that's not going to happen. And so hopefully I can just be at peace with what is and where I'm at now, and proceed in my life in a way that's I just don't want to carry that anymore. I keep telling people, like, I'm ready to shut the chapter. Like, we don't want to keep reading the same chapter, right? Like, it's the peak, right? It's like, whoa, okay, how does she get over this? Like, how does she move forward? I'm ready to write those chapters. I'm
excellent.
Done. Yeah, it's like that chapter's closed. I'm ready to turn the page, see how the new queen bee built her hive.
This is so exciting. I remember you told me from your first experience that you had some sort of insight or message that, we're just all here to be playful.
That's right.
Beings, right?
100%. Yeah, that did not happen this last time. So yes, thank you for reminding me. We're here to play. And that is literally like, that's right. I remember the first time it was like, I am mostly joy. Like, I am playful. I am fun. Like, let's go have fun. Not take everything so damn serious, right? So yes.
But these last two experiences have been absolutely wonderful for you, because they've shown you the whole gamut.
Yes.
The whole rainbow of colors, the whole spectrum of colors, of emotions that live inside of you. And it's great for you to go through that experience, have those experiences as exercises. So you know what that emotion feels like. You know how to recognize it. You know how to sit with it, how to manage it when it comes up. right?
Yes.
And this is your ultimate, and this is a huge step forward in personal self-development, in maturation, in all of these kinds of things, so that you can ultimately achieve whatever it is that you came here to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll leave with this at the psychedelic conference. You know, and I think we also needed to honor the indigenous and the people who have been so connected to the earth and to nature, and that this medicine is everybody's. It's everybody. Everybody has a right to these medicines. Everybody does. My body, my choice, and that body autonomy that we get to choose what we put in our bodies, but we also honor the people who have a deep connection to the earth and to know what's healthy for the earth as well. And I think that was very evident in the psychedelic conference, about how we need to honor and remember like where these medicines came from.
100%. Yeah, and to also respect the continuity
Thank you.
that these cultures have maintained for, you know, in some cases millennia, to protect these things and to make sure that they would be accessible to people when, you know, people were ready for them in the right time and all of that stuff. And so I think to come at it with that level of humility, respect, reverence for the whole entire history of it, really learn about it, really put some time and effort into understanding it, and not just say, I need this because I need this experience, and, you know, be so caught up in one's state. And that, I think, that's how you write your new chapter, right? You go outside of yourself, you learn about other things, you experience the world.
Yeah, and honestly, and like with Ayurveda, I think that was kind of something that I did, you know, like I'm like, I want to know where this medicine comes from, and you know, and learning about how different settlers try to come in and take it from India and extract the parts that were beneficial in the moment and made them more superior, right? And just even learning about how Ayurveda has been suppressed and how it's been mocked and not been respected. And so my first step is respecting the medicine and respecting the people like you who go over and take the time and dedication to learn the language, to learn and understand where these formulas are coming from, to understand, and how much time and energy you've put into it, and to really honor your path as well, because you have done so much work and you have really dedicated so much of your life to understanding this ancient practice that is so beneficial for us today. And so, you know, even going out, when I tell people about Ayurveda, they're like, oh yeah, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. I'm like, excuse me, did you go to India? Do you know Jessica? So, but just to really honor the heritage and honor the traditions. And the same thing goes with the psychedelic world. And I know MDMA is synthesized in a lab, and it's man-made, and it's a lot different than what you're going to get from psilocybin or iboga or ayahuasca, but it has its place.
Absolutely. Right. It doesn't mean that, you know, we can't invent things. I mean, the whole, everything that we have around us, so you and I are talking like this now, is because human ingenuity is capable of inventing things.
Right.
So that's to be honored as well. But yeah, I think having all these reminders is so beneficial. So thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Jess.
You're welcome.
I am excited to see what happens. I don't know. I have no expectations. Impermanence, right? I am just, I have no expectations for tomorrow. I'm just going to go in with a beginner's mindset.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I'm very excited to hear the results. You can message me anytime you want. All right.
Okay. I totally will.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Get a good night's rest before.
Okay. I know, right? All right. We'll chat soon.
Very good. All right. Thanks, and catch you next time.
Okay.